Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg in Jerusalem, founder and editor-in-chief of All Israel News and our sister site, All Arab News, with breaking news. We've got a major development. Late Wednesday at 4:43, actually in the afternoon, Israel time, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tweeted out that he would never allow any law to pass that would harm the Christian community. This was exactly what American evangelical leaders and other Christian leaders have been asking for after this really dreadful bill was introduced by two ultra-Orthodox members of the Knesset that would have banned all communication, all conversation about the gospel of Jesus Christ in Israel, the land of Jesus's life and birth and death and resurrection, and I hope soon coming, soon. But imagine not being able to talk about your faith in Jesus, and the punishment was prison. We broke the story on Sunday in an article for All Israel News, and the story was picked up by many Christian outlets. And joining me now is the former U.S. Ambassador Sam Brownback. Sam was President Trump and Vice President Pence ambassador on what? International religious freedom. And he's the one that I turn to first to say, hey, this is the bill. Would you give us a quote? And that quote really helps people understand, and I want to say this to you, Ambassador, as well as to our audience, just how serious this, a breach of religious freedom, this really was. But Ambassador, you and I have known each other, I don't know, almost 30 years now. I just want to say thank you, and it's great to see you. And talk a little bit about first, this big development where not only has Netanyahu spoken, but I'll add something you may not know. The author of the bill, one of the two authors, Knesset member Moshe Gafni, just issued a statement saying that he's essentially, tabling the legislation and it's not going to go anywhere. So this is a big victory in just a few short days. So would you react to that first, and then we'll talk about what the bill was.
Yeah, well, good to see you again, Joel. It's been too long, so I look forward to catching up with you more. This is a major development, both in what was proposed, which was negative, and then the response here, which has been positive. This proposal, Israel is a beacon of an open society in a region that just doesn't know much about open societies. And so for them to move forward with closing down and restricting religious freedom is just really counter to what Israel stands for, counter to what Israel does. It's counter to the UN Human Rights Declaration, which Israel is a co-sponsor and signed on to. But then for Benjamin Netanyahu to have this rapid response and one of the authors to pull back, I think is really highlighting that they get it. This is not the way Israel should go, and they're backing away from it. And for that, I applaud their aggressive and quick reaction.
Yeah, I do too. I think Netanyahu has proven once again that he is the leading voice in Israel over the last 30 years, almost as long as you and I have known each other. He's been the leading voice to build a strategic alliance, not just a friendship, but a strategic alliance with Christians all over the world, particularly the 60 million or so evangelical Christians and Roman Catholics and Orthodox and others who love Israel and believe in religious freedom and are, don't agree with every policy that Israel or even Netanyahu pursues. But Netanyahu has realized that the core of at least American support for Israel comes from the Christian community.
He does, and he's proven that yet again. And he's not scared of Christians. Right. That's that he's worked with. I've worked with him over the years. He's been a great guy to work with. He's led Israel. He's one of the key leaders in the world today of stature and ability. And so when he saw this coming, what I'm sure came through his mind is, why are we doing this? This isn't what Israel is about, and it hurts us in one of our key strategic bases in the United States. Let's get out of this as fast as we can, and that's the decisive action that he's shown. I hope it doesn't now kind of pop up in another direction or another way. because this really shouldn't happen. The Christian support for Israel is so important and so fundamental and so stout. You just don't want to weaken that when you've got it and when Israel has so many things really moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Freedom requires vigilance, and so I think we'll keep a close eye at this at All Israel News and on my TV show, the Rosenberg Report on TBN. And I think this goes to a very important point, Ambassador, that you and I have talked about a lot. And in fact, you were very gracious to invite me to be a speaker at the State Department's ministerial on international religious freedom that you held. You held several of them, and I was very honored to be at one of them. And as you and I discussed, and as I discussed in my remarks there, religious freedom has not always been a centerpiece, a top priority of every administration, but it is a bipartisan view, I think, overall. But one of the most sensitive areas of religious freedom is this question of, are you allowed to talk to other people about what you believe and even try to persuade them to believe what you believe? Most people want to think that religious freedom is you believe what you believe, and I'm allowed to believe what I believe, and then that's it. But that's really freedom of religion. I'm not, or maybe that's freedom of worship. That's not really freedom of religion. Or Orthodox Jews want to convert people to, secular Jews and Reform Jews to be Orthodox. Muslims want to convert people to Islam. We who follow Jesus, especially those of us who are Jewish, think, listen, if Jesus really is the Messiah, we at least want our people to know about him. But it is very sensitive. And so a democracy that's able to allow unpopular speech and a freedom of discussion, that's a healthy society, even if it has other challenges.
It really is important. And this is actually in Article 18 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights that was put together back in the 40s. It's the right to be able to speak about your faith and to change your faith if you choose. That's actually in the language. And the important thing here really
which, as you pointed out in your quote to us at All Israel News, Israel is a signatory to the UN Human Rights Declaration, of which changing your faith, or at least being able to talk about it, is a central core tenet.
It is, and it's a part of religious freedom. And in a democracy, this is the tough issue. It's one of the key tough issues. You look at India today, the largest democracy in the world. They really struggle with this. And they say, well, okay, these people are proselytizing, but they're bribing people with it. And when I was there and I met with them, they said that. I said, look, if you've got a case of people bribing somebody to convert, I want to know about it. Right. I want to publish this and go after it. But if there is just a desire for a person to say, this is what I believe, and this is why I believe it, and I think it's so important, I want to share it, that's part of your religious freedom. And it's part of in a democracy, one like Israel has, this is kind of a tense point, because people are saying, well, I'm okay with Jews doing this, but I don't know about the rest of the folks. And you're being American, you could say, well, I'm okay with Christians doing that, but I don't know about Muslims doing that. Right. It doesn't work that way. Religious freedom is for everybody, everywhere, all the time. And that's the only way it works. And then the government's role is to protect that right. It's not to pick one side or another. It's to say, no, we don't pick a side on this, but we protect this human right. And it's a dignity that each individual has to choose to do with their own soul what they choose, including change their ideas about what they may believe.
Well, you're such a strong and consistent and effective voice on this. This is why President Trump and Vice President Pence and Secretary of State Pompeo thought you were the best man for the job. It's interesting also that I first met you when you were a freshman in the House of Representatives. In fact, I think you weren't even sworn in yet. We met at a sort of a freshman orientation weekend in 1994. But then you became a senator from your state of Kansas, later a governor, then of course this ambassador. But I remember that as a senator, you were effective on many issues, but one of which you actually wrote the international religious freedom law that part of it created an ambassadorial role to promote this core human right. Who knew? I don't think in our conversations back then you were thinking you were writing yourself a future job description. But it is interesting, right? That you ended up being chosen to do the very role that you thought somebody should do.
Yeah, that's kind of the part of the divine comedy, I guess, of things, Joel, if you will, because Don Nichols was the lead author of the bill, but I was one of the key co-sponsors of it. But they put that ambassador position in. I was very supportive of that. I'd worked prior with the prior ambassadors, particularly when I was in the Senate. When I was in the governor, less opportunity to do that. But then in the final year as governor, President Trump offered me this job. It was actually Mike Pence that called me and offered me the job. And I said, yes, that would be good. And then what happened that was really important was they made it a core foreign policy issue, recognizing that it's generally religious people that form the civil society in a country that give so much back in the form of hospitals and education, things like that. And also, they're often the only group that's left standing in an authoritarian government that can stand up to the government, like what's taking place in Nicaragua today, where they're trying to run out the Catholic Church. It's the Catholic Church is the only thing, and evangelicals there in Nicaragua that's kind of left standing that can stand up to Ortega. And that's why it's such a central human right that you maintain religious freedom, because so many of the other rights can draw their strength and their support and their activity out of this fundamental right.
Well, I appreciate it very much. And I'm glad that it's not a partisan issue. You are a Republican, but you work very closely with Democrats, both to pass that legislation as well as to implement it over the years, also setting up the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, which is a bipartisan team also, and it's doing good work. I also appreciate your Christian faith. I never asked you how you characterize yourself. Maybe an evangelical Roman Catholic. Is that a fair definition?
I just characterize myself as a follower of Jesus.
That's great.
That's that pretty much wraps it, and that's what I am. That's what I try to do, and I'm just overwhelmed almost sometimes by my faith because of how much it's done for me and changed me in my life. So
I appreciate it. You're also a great friend of Israel, and I hope you'll come back soon. Do you have any current plans to come over here?
I don't. I was supposed to be there a couple of weeks ago, and then that trip got scuttled. I've been in Israel, I think, 8 or 9 times, and I love the place. And it's an absolutely wonderful place. And I hope to be back soon.
Well, we'd love to welcome you. And I want to thank you again on behalf of all of our viewers and listeners for your strong stand and encouragement. You weren't criticizing the Netanyahu government. You were saying this is a problem. This bill is a problem, and this is a principle that needs to be upheld. And I'm encouraged, and I'm glad you are too. And thank you, sir.